Alrighty, welcome everyone to a very important webinar where we'll be going through what I like to call the behaviour management basics. Now, there's a lot of different ways that I can talk about behaviour management in terms of core strategies or core techniques or in reference to different types of behaviour. So I would recommend first and foremost to really watch the other bigger videos that I've got on behaviour management as a lead up to this one, and that's the videos on the root causes of behaviour, because that's an important aspect which I'll briefly go over here. Also the different types of behaviour, that one's also pretty important. I'll skip through and you'll see some of those some aspects from those videos being spoken about here, and I'll bring in some of the terminology just as I go through and discuss some of these basic strategies in this video. So for that reason, I think it's important to watch those ones first. But in saying that, if you've only got a little bit of time, I'm going to go through 15 basic strategies today of the 80 or 90 that I talk about in my behaviour management book. Obviously, there are hundreds of behaviour management strategies. Some of them are kind of more like tricks or little tips and hints and things like that, whereas other ones are core strategies that every teacher or teacher aide needs to know, and they're very important to our day-to-day activities and our day-to-day practice as as educational professionals. So let's get started. These are not in any particular order, by the way. Number one is low-key responses. And I'll just put up 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, low-key responses is basically a reactive strategy that involves using the absolute minimal amount of effort possible in order to deal with the thousands of little minor behavioural problems that you'll come across in your day-to-day work as either a teacher or a teacher aide, trainer, coach, so on and so forth. Now, low-key responses are things along the lines of facial expressions. So you might have a student over here who is doing something silly, or maybe they're just talking to a friend, or dropped a piece of paper, or they're off task, or they're daydreaming, or whatever. These types of behaviours that are very common and just not that important. Maybe you've got a student tapping a pen while you're trying to talk to other students here. Maybe that student, while they're all supposed to be working quietly, starts whispering to a friend all the time, and it gets a bit, I guess, irritating. Now, those behaviours don't require consequences because they're usually one-off. Sometimes they can be repetitive, but generally we're not concerned with that behaviour. They're what we call disruptive behaviours. They're kind of irritating, they're annoying, they're kids being kids in a way. Some students do them more than others, obviously, but it's not something that we're going to start calling home about or writing individual behaviour plans about or anything like that. For those responses, the best thing that we can do is use for those behaviours, the best thing we can do is low-key responses, because it means we deal with it without annoying other students, without interrupting their learning, and without making us, as the teacher or as the teacher aide, stressed out because of the constant negative issues that come with dealing with behaviour management. So if we can deal with something using minimum necessary force or minimal necessary force, particularly at the lower end of that spectrum, particularly at the low-key responses, and also I have a video on minimal necessary force, which is very important, so please watch that one because it quite thoroughly goes through some of the examples of low-key responses and comparing it to other different ways in which we can react to behaviour and think about and conceptualise behaviour in a proactive way as well. So, but low-key responses is ideal, and it's what we want to be doing literally 99% of the time. So teachers, teacher aides walking around a normal normal. Year 3 class, Year 7 class, Year 9 class, Year 1 class, whatever, we'll be using low-key responses hundreds and hundreds of times a day. 99 times out of 100, it's in that sort of area. And it might technically be slightly more than a low-key response. It depends on the definition. These terms have been around for about 30 or 40 years, closer to 40 years actually, and it's just kind of become a strategy that almost all experienced teacher aides, or those who have gone off and read about behaviour management or done PDs or whatever, will be aware of. So that's why I've put it up as number 1. And again, I'm not saying this is the most important one, and it's certainly not any more important than number 2 or number 12 or whatever. It's just the first one that came to mind as I was trying to write a bit of a list, because of the 80 or so that I talk about in my books and blogs and other videos and things. It's probably, in fact, there's way more than that. That was just the first one that came to mind. And the question I posed to myself, I guess, when I was trying to figure out how to narrow it down to 10 or 15 strategies was, if there was one thing that I could have people who are watching this remember, it would probably be low-key responses, and that's just because of that volume. And it's also the area where, as teachers or teacher aides, we get stressed out the most if we're dealing with huge volumes of behavioural problems, minor annoying behavioural problems, and each one is grating on us and stressing us out. But by using low-key responses, we reduce that stress and we reduce that anxiety, and not only on us but also on the students as well. Because the idea with low-key responses is that we're not interrupting anyone else's learning, and we're using the minimal low-key response that we can. So that can mean just moving your arm like that. It can mean a little finger point or something. It can mean a little signal like that. That means put your pen down or put that on the floor or whatever. It can mean just raising your eyebrows. It can mean a stern sort of look. It can mean using their name, what is called a minimal verbal, which I guess is a low-key response, or counts as a low-key response, because it's very, again, not disrupting other students, particularly if you do it in a private way. I think if you're yelling to the other side of the room, that probably wouldn't count as a low-key response. So all of these types of things. Proximity is another low-key response, because you're standing or sitting or just positioning yourself in or around other certain students who are likely to or have recently had behavioural issues, say they were whispering or something like that. Positioning yourself in that area is a way of basically telling students, I'm aware of what's going on here. If you continue, obviously I'm going to have to intervene and we're going to have problems. So that's the basic idea behind low-key responses. And that really leads me to the second one that I'm going to put up, and the third one actually. Third one will be positioning, but I really want to do for number 2, and I want to do a different colour pen for each one here because I'm just being creative. Minimum necessary force. So minimum necessary force, again, I've got a video about that one, but I do like to put it up as one of the top 15-ish, or I'm going to for this video anyway, because while it's not a technique per se, it is a very important concept to understand in terms of all of these techniques and strategies that we use, whether they're proactive strategies or reactive strategies or anything sort of in between. The idea of minimum necessary force is absolutely essential, and that basically means exactly as it says. If this is what the student is, this is the behaviour that we observed, then we want to match that behaviour with an equal amount of force that is just enough to achieve what we want to achieve our goal. Our goal might be to stop that behaviour then. Our goal might be to not only stop it, but to also teach the student that we don't want that to happen again in the future, or that they need to quell that repetitive aspect of their poor decision making in this particular lesson. So we can have various different goals. Sometimes the goal is simply so that the student stops doing that so you can keep teaching, but other times there might be more stringent or more ongoing consequences applied to that behaviour, and in which case, again, our goals are changing and the way in which we deal with that behaviour changes as well. So watch that video on minimum necessary force. I like to categorise behaviour on scales, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being 1, 2 and 3, maybe 1 and 2 being behaviour that is really deserves that low-key approach. And in which case, those types of behaviours which are, just irritating sort of behaviour will do low-key type things, but there are more serious behaviours at say level 7 or level 8 or whatever, in which the minimal necessary force for that is a lot greater. So it requires our time, it requires our effort. Instead of just a little hand signal and a non-verbal hand signal or some type of body language thing or whatever, that minimal necessary force at the level 7 or 8, it might be some type of behavioural contract, or it might be a phone call to parents, or it might be some type of other action that is more systematic and proactive, or what I like to call post-active. So that's the idea of minimal necessary force. Now, I think that's an important one because a lot of teacher and teacher aides get in trouble here because they might panic, or they might be in a situation where they're very busy and they're under a lot of pressure because students will do something and then they feel that there's 30 eyes watching them and they have to suddenly make a snap decision about how to react. So the tendency might be to overreact. So I think running that idea of, okay, what's the minimum necessary force to get this to stop in its tracks now, given what you know about the student, might be slightly different to your natural inclination to behave or to react in a certain way. Particularly if we're tired, we get in bad moods just like students do, just like any other human being does. So bearing in mind that sort of matching principle, I guess you would call it. Now, the next one I want to talk about is a bit more practical, and that's this idea of positioning and also proximity, which is another term that you might come across. And that basically means that you're thinking very carefully about where you position yourself in the classroom. So if you've got, if that's the front desk up there and you've got a group of students here and another group of students there, and let's draw some actual tables. There we go. Let's say we've just got some groups there. Now the natural, I wouldn't say inclination, natural assumption of most, what would happen at the beginning of most lessons is that you will have a teacher say here, and you might have a teacher aide there. As the beginning of the lesson unfolds and there's a bit of explicit instruction or some stuff on the board or whatever. And then over time there'll be some circulation there. That teacher might start there, go there, and that one might go there and whatnot. So that's the basics of how it might begin. Let's use as an example. And it's just important to think about whether that is the best spot to be delivering that particular part of the lesson. There's no reason why you couldn't be here. There's no reason why you couldn't be there. What I like to do is start the lesson. Usually I will sit myself here quite often. So you're in something of a corner, but you still have that vista, just the same as you have that vista there. So you don't have to be up the front. And you can move it around. There's no reason why you can't put stuff on the board and then wander over here and face that direction while you're talking. And the same as if you're a teacher aide and you're working in a room with, say, 6 students or 3 students or whatever. Let's say you're working with these. And then there's sitting, right, let's say you've got a student here, student here, student here, student here. There is no reason for you to be sitting, say, in this position or that position. So you're just thinking carefully about where you're going to position yourself and regularly circulating as well. The big thing with positioning is, let's say the class, let's say irrespective of whether it's the teacher or the teacher aide, that class has been, you've done all your instruction and then they've been told, okay, now we're going on with group work or pair work or individual work. Positioning is all about putting yourself in the right position, in the most optimal position that reduces the amount of behavioural issues that happen in a classroom. So if you've got this student here in blue and this one here, if they're sort of chatty on this particular day, then you're not going to stand here and then immediately go and help this student here, and the teacher shouldn't go there. What should happen is one of those individuals for starters, they should start there. And for secondly, they should stay in that area and in that group, and particularly on this half here, so that you still have that vista there. You'd almost never come into the centre here, or not, well, depending, but that's not ideal. You really want to be looking in so you can see what's going on for all directions, because kids will know whether you've got that peripheral vision happening. So that's what positioning is all about. It's just thinking carefully about not only where you're teaching from, whether it's a small group or a whole group, but also in this way in which you circulate as well. So that's the idea behind positioning. And proximity is the idea that you are, I talk about positioning in my book, and the subsection of that is proximity. And that's why I do it that way. And that's because proximity is just the effect. If that student there is likely to be off task, you just move to that area and you help this group out with whatever activity they're doing. And because you're in proximity of them, your natural just being there is going to stop a lot of behavioural issues in itself. So not always, but it does significantly help 9 times out of 10. In fact, it's one of the most important low-key responses and one of the most effective, proactive strategies that you can do while you're actually on class. So that's the idea of positioning and proximity, and why it's so important to just bear that one in mind and use it almost constantly. A lot of these things too, especially the low-key responses and positioning, is something that we use constantly. It's not a technique that we just put in our back pocket, as a lot of techniques are, and pull them out as we need them. These are the techniques that you are using constantly, 24/7, but from the second you walk on class to the second you walk off class, you're using these constantly. You can use them for proactive reasons as well. So you're not just using them to stop issues once they've happened, you're also using them as you notice issues unfolding. So, or even if students are getting a little bit loud, but they're not quite at the point where you're willing to stop them or tell them that they need to be quiet, or to work silently or whatever, you can use a low-key response to cut them down, sort of as a proactive risk minimisation strategy, I guess you could say. So those 3 are very important. Situational awareness is the next one. Situational awareness, and meet them at the door. Okay, now number 4 is situational awareness. This one is another super important strategy, although I say that all the time, but it really is. Situational awareness is also known as withitness, and it just means that you know what's going on at all times, whether you're the teacher, whether you're teacher aide. Because what happens sometimes is that the teacher or teacher aide will come in, they'll work with that student there, and just completely ignore, not quite ignore, but I guess ignore is a good way to think about it. Block out what's going on around here, and you can imagine that these students over this side, or this student here and here, they're going to potentially start behaving in ways in which are not optimal. And if that does happen, that teacher then has to come over here, which means this person is not getting as much attention or getting the instructional expertise that they need to be able to acquire new knowledge or learn about a concept or whatever. So there are obvious problems with that, and if you deal with that one, chances are that these students are getting a little bit louder because those students originally got louder a few minutes earlier, and there's a bit of what we call the snowball effect, where one behaviour means other students behave in less desirable ways, and so on and so forth. So for lots of different obvious reasons, it's important that from the second you see students in the morning to the second you pull into your driveway when you get home, you've got situational awareness. You're thinking about what's happening not just in front of you, but also what's happening all around you. You're using your peripheral vision, you're looking at these students, even though you're helping this student, but you're also just thinking carefully being conscious of, not hyper aware to the point where you're becoming a bit manic, but you're thinking about what's going on to those students that are on the other side of the room as well. And that's, again, not just the teacher, but also for teacher aides, because, well, as I generally say, kids don't see the difference between a teacher aide and a teacher. They quite often just see an adult, so it makes no difference. And when you're actually doing this type of work, where it's group work or you're circulating, it's basically a 50-50 split for how that behaviour management is dealt with, particularly in a low-key response type way, and particularly, well, yeah, mainly in that low-key response type manner. When students start doing things that gets beyond the basic level of response, then that's when the teacher might start being involved a bit more, and the split of who deals with what might change. But at that level, and it is more like a 50-50 split, and probably even more so for the teacher aide in some cases, because the teacher might be helping students with specific things. They might be helping the accelerated students, or if it's a year 11 class or 10 class or even high school class where it's a specialist subject, the teacher is the content expert. So it'll be their job, they may see their job more so to help the class from that content type perspective. So it'll then fall back to the teacher aide to do more circulatory type work, more positioning, more low-key responses, and you'll need to have a heightened situational awareness compared to the actual teacher. Okay, so that's that one. Number 5 is meet them at the door. This is just something that I chucked in there because I don't think it's necessarily it is not as important as these 4. It might not even be as important as the rest of them. I guess you could argue backwards and forth. It's kind of positioning in the way, except for its positioning. It's also called greet them at the door. People call this one different things. And it's been around for a while, actually. There were some research articles that came out. Actually, I really don't know when they came out, but they're quite old, probably 80s or 90s or something like that, that spoke about this as a key strategy to help with behaviour management. Because, of course, even though there's lots of new trendy programs out there with trendy cool names and things like that, and yeah, you'll see those when you start going out into schools if you're not in there already, they're all based on the exact same thing that's been around since the 60s and 70s, just like the teaching strategies, and you might have seen really fancy phonics type things or phonological type programs or numeracy programs or whatever. They're all based on the same teaching strategies that we've known about as researchers since starting in the 50s and 60s. Things like scaffolding has been around for 50 odd years, and so this one's been around for a long time, just as all these other ones have, and it's all around the idea that as students come into the room, you're standing near the door. So let's say that is the whiteboard and there's a door here. The teacher and teacher aide, or one or the other, will be sort of just positioning themselves in that spot, and as students come through, they're just having a little chat to them, just like a security guard as you enter a nightclub or a pub or something like that. As they're walking in, they're just saying hello, you're just greeting them, you're making sure they're calm. That helps them transition from the playground type attitude to the classroom attitude. You can do a lot of things like pre-corrections, which we'll get to in a moment. You're talking to students about their administrative type things if you need to talk to them about that. And which could be, for example, uniform or whatever. And what quite often happens is those pre-corrections are important in terms of seating plans, in terms of just letting the student know that you're onto them type of thing, so that they know that you're on the ball. You're not just sitting behind the desk or not paying attention, and also that you remember how they were last lesson and whether they were good or whether they weren't so good and so on. So it can be, it should be positive and friendly, humorous. You can give students compliments and say, how are you today? Wow, those are new shoes. Aren't those shoes fantastic? Or something like that. So any way that you can engage with that student is going to help build rapport as well. The same happens as this is typically thought of in terms of students entering the classroom. And another way to do this, by the way, is in high schools, for example, students just seem to come in one at a time. But when you're, particularly in the higher grades, but For most of the time, students will also be lined up and the teacher will let them in at certain times, at a certain time when they're ready and the class is quiet or whatnot. But as students are filing in, you can then talk to them as they're doing that, even though they'll be coming in mass. So you might not be able to talk to every single student, but certainly it gives you that presence and it gives you that, helps display that aura of confidence, which is another way of preventing a lot of behavioural issues, particularly early on in the class. So that's the meet them at the door process, and it works in reverse. So while this is spoken about as they come in, I also like to think of it as they go out as well. So it's the complete opposite. You're thanking them as they leave. You're talking to them about their behaviour in the next lesson. That might be tomorrow or whatever. You're reminding them about any administrative type things. You're ensuring that their area is clean before they go, and so on and so forth. So you could also think of it in the reverse. Okay. Things don't want to erase off this board lately. I don't know why that is. Right, so we have number 6, which is... that one's not working very well. Number 6 is escalations. Escalations. Number 7 is noise control, which is a very interesting one. Number 8, short, sharp activities. Yeah. Oop. Short, sharp activities. Number 9, positive prompting. All right. So, with escalations, the reason I put this one in here is because it is a very important concept and something to be very cautious of, because there is a lot of behaviour management programs out there that talk about escalations. It's, again, nothing new. This concept of escalations has been around for decades, and it basically means that you're upping the level that you're reacting to a behaviour if the student continues with that behaviour. So let's say that a student does something simple that you would categorise as level 3. Doesn't really matter what a level 3 is, but let's just use some numbers to make it easy. And then the minimum necessary force to deal with that level 3 behaviour is a level 3 reaction. But if the student continues and does another, if that doesn't work, then obviously you're going to have to up it to a number 4. So that's the basic idea behind escalations. Of course, there are serious issues with that, and if you've gone through that section of either the blog or my books, then you'll know that I'm very hesitant to teach this particularly in the way that it's been taught up until now, because there are serious issues with escalations. Firstly, the assumption that you should always escalate is wrong. You shouldn't always escalate. According to this minimum necessary force concept, actually you can go down a level as well. So I call that a follow-up enforcer, and it basically means that it's almost like a reminder. So let's run through a little scenario here. So let's say one student is talking to another student and they're not supposed to be talking, and you do a low-key response to sort of stop them. So it might be like a little conversation. It might be it might be a hand signal to begin with, like that, or something like that. And then you go about doing your thing. And then a few minutes later, they're talking again. Now, you would think in that case you would have to escalate, so they've decided to continue. But maybe in this case you think, okay, I'm just going to repeat it. So I don't need to escalate, I'm just going to repeat it. I can't go backwards because it was a very low-key response anyway. So in that case, maybe you'll up it, but only just a tiny bit. So you'll position yourself closer to them. You might come over and just tap their desk and just stare at them and then move off. That's all you need to do. You haven't said anything, it hasn't stressed you out, hasn't interrupted any other students, and there's plenty of places you can go afterwards. So you've escalated, you've kind of repeated, but you've also escalated just a little bit there. Now, let's say in that case, and what you see quite often in schools, is the teacher or teacher aide will take that second behaviour as some type of affront to their authority as an adult in the classroom, and will do something that might be, instead of being a level 4 or level 3 or whatnot, we'll go straight to level 7 and kick the kid out of class or, whatever. So if that happens though, you can see where that can lead to problems. That type of overreaction can lead to problems. And children are particularly sensitive to those types of overreactions. Even if the logical response would be a level 4 and you're doing a response at level 5, it's only just out by a little bit, but it's still not complying with that. And it really doesn't comply with social norms either. And it doesn't comply with the sort of expectations and habits of how these things are dealt with in a school environment. So that kid can react very negatively, and that can escalate the situation even faster. Now, if, for example, that student refuses to move, let's say you want to kick them out of class, they're talking a bit, so you say, right, you outside, go sit outside the classroom for 3 minutes, and the student then refuses to move. You have very few options then. They're what I call relocation refusers, and they are extremely difficult and challenging and disruptive in terms of trying to deal with that particular decision or that particular behaviour. One of the reasons for that is because students are so sensitive to the social aspects of being in class, just like we are as adults as well. If you're in a group of adults in a seminar or something like that. So because you've singled that student out, and it's also probably slightly the way in which you've reacted is above the way in which you should have, the response is too high, the student reacts and refuses to move. So your escalations have led to further escalations and other problems, not just for you, but for other staff who now need to get involved as well. So anyway, the point is just be very careful with escalations. Don't make the assumption that you should always escalate, and don't make the assumption that it's the student that chose to escalate that situation. It quite often is the teacher or teacher aide who makes the decision to escalate. And if you do that, there's nothing wrong with doing that. You can do it, but just to be aware that it can lead to that never-ending, not a never-ending process, but it can lead to a step up in issues and the time it takes to deal with it and the disruptions and so forth, which can lead to the next step, which can lead to the next step. There are other ways of dealing with it first, which might be just a gentle reminder, which might be just ignoring it for a little bit and seeing if it's secondary behaviour and it might go away. And we'll get to that one in a minute. It might be just repeating what you're currently doing. So again, just be very careful with escalations, but be aware of it and be aware of that process as far as minimum necessary force. Because if you do if the behaviour is a 3 and you do a 3 and it doesn't work, maybe you've actually done a 2.5. So you need to jump up a level. This will make sense if you've watched my other videos we were talking about earlier as far as minimal necessary force is concerned. So when we go through that matching process to match our response with behaviour, sometimes we don't always get that right, and we need to change up how we're doing it and think about it in a different way, and in which case we can escalate to the next level. Now an escalation can also, it can go like this. You've got a low-key response. You might ignore it. You might tactfully ignore it and just decide I'm not going to deal with that behaviour right now. I'm too busy. Even though it is a behaviour issue, it's not important enough to trump what I'm doing over here. So you might ignore it, but then it continues. So then you do some type of low key, like a minimal verbal. So you might say, Johnny, I'm busy over here. Stop it. Thank you. And you go back on with doing what you're doing. And then if it continues, you might need to then physically move over to that location and have a chat with that student for a little bit and so on. So you can see how I've gone through 3 escalations in that very short period of time. That may take 10 minutes or so. So and the other thing with escalations is just to point out that you should try and stay as low as possible. So you want your low-key responses. If escalations, or if the way in which you deal with behaviour, there are, say, 10 different levels, you want to stay at the lowest level possible. Because if you start at level 5, then the only way you can escalate is by going to level 6 or 7. But if you start at level 1 or 2, then you can easily escalate to level 3 and 4 relatively easily without too many problems. So if you start with get out of class, I'll talk to you later type of thing, and the student reacts badly to that because you've embarrassed them in front of their peers and your response was disproportionate and feels a little unfair, then you've already escalated, you've already started at level 6 or 7. To go to level 8 is very, very difficult, and potentially you'll be seen as being unprofessional or I wouldn't say unprofessional, but as soon as you have to start getting other staff involved unnecessarily, that's not the best thing to do if you don't have to, because obviously staff are very busy. Okay, noise control. I just wanted to do a little graph about noise control because this is an area where it causes a lot of stress amongst teachers and teacher aides, and it's very difficult to get a feel for how to go about controlling noise. Obviously, we have to do a lot of pre-corrections. We do a lot of things like positioning and proximity, so we're walking around and making sure that noise doesn't even get to the point where it's an issue. So noise control, if you're in a Year 9 class or whatever class you're in and noise is a problem, thinking through the multi-pronged ways in which you can deal with noise is often quite challenging, but certainly an area that you can get on top of by using lots of different strategies. One of them is short, sharp activities, which we'll get to in a second, or different types of instructional approaches, and that can be very effective as well. So with noise control, just think of that like a multi-pronged approach, and particularly if you're dealing with whole classes that are quite loud, there are quite a few different things you can do there, but it is something that you need to get on top of quite quick. And the reason for it is this: when you start off a lesson, so this is just a little graph of, so that's one lesson that goes like that. Now what quite often happens, and this is noise volume over here, and this is time, say 60 minutes or whatever, the classes generally don't start off too loud, particularly if you're doing the greet them at the door thing and so forth, but it'll keep going. Let's say it goes like this. And there might be some dips in there where you've tried to get control of them or whatever. This happens for teacher aides working in small groups, or if you're circulating and you notice this, then there are things that you can do as well. So let's say there's a bit of a dip there and it quite often spikes at the very end, and this is where all the adults are getting a bit tired and things like that as well. There are much better ways of going about dealing with noise, and that is trying to arrest it here. So instead of letting it get out of control, you're trying to arrest it there so it doesn't, and it might spike and things, there might be various reasons. It's always going to spike at the end of the lesson, sometimes Friday afternoon or whatever, but you're trying to arrest it here before it snowballs out of control. So there's various ways you can do that. One way, for example, is short, sharp activities, and what that basically means is that if you're moving away from doing activities that are 15 minutes long, 20 minutes long, to doing more teacher-centred activities that are 3 minutes long, 4 minutes long, those types of things. So short, sharp activities is great for small group work. It's also great for whole of class activities as well. And I have some other videos on explicit instruction that goes through that in quite a lot of depth. Short, sharp activities, pace, momentum, these types of things are central tenets of explicit instruction. You can still use play-based learning and various other different instructional methods while you're doing this as a behaviour management strategy. So that's not to say that this is the most effective way of teaching kids, although it is very effective, but it is to say that as a behaviour management strategy, it is an important thing to consider if you're having issues with noise in particular, or just students being on task. So if you're doing what I call the set and circulate, where you're doing some stuff on the board and then you're walking around and helping students, but you're walking around for 20, 30 minutes and they're working in pairs or groups or whatever, then you're probably going to have you're going to have that noise problem and a lot of other issues. Whereas if you're doing short, sharp activities where it's the student is doing something and then it comes back to you and you're going through an answer with them as a group, and then they're going off and doing some more practice, and then it comes back and you're doing one question at a time in a lockstep sort of fashion, which children seem to enjoy quite a lot as well. You'd think that they wouldn't, being that it's so structured. But in actual fact, if you do it in the right way, it can be quite much more enjoyable than going through it and then letting them work in pairs for 20 or 30 minutes. So anyway, this one here is really about using different type of instructional methods as a behaviour management technique. So that also works if say you're a teacher aide, you're working one-on-one with a focus student who has some type of disability or whatnot, and you're doing a lot of differentiation type tasks, providing some type of short, sharp activity, dividing, chunking down, scaffolding the activities that student is doing into lots of short, sharp activities is, I think personally, a very effective behaviour management tool, and that's why I've put it there on as one of my top strategies. So, next one, positive prompting. Positive prompting is the tried and tested and I guess research-based strategy that has been proven to work in a lot of, I don't know if you call them experiments, but a lot of research that's been published talks about positive prompting and various different iterations, and there's lots of different ways in which this is spoken about, I guess, lots of different terminology. But positive prompting basically means that you're trying to take a strength-based approach, I guess, is another term that's, I guess, more politically correct these days. And that basically means that you're concentrating on what the student can do well as opposed to what they can't do, and providing more compliments to encourage them. Because we do know that the more motivated students are, the more they're going to learn in the short, well, probably, in the short, but definitely in the medium to long term. So by improving their motivation, by giving them positive prompts, well, I like it how you wrote that sentence. That's a very descriptive word, well done type of thing, as opposed to concentrating on the negative. And we can still give them ideas for improvement and things. And this works not only for behaviour, but also from a instructional point of view. From a behaviour management point of view, where either, for example, we might say, well done, Johnny, you're sitting up very nicely. I appreciate that. Well done, Sarah. Well done, Alex. Everyone's ready to go. And that positive prompting reinforces that behaviour for that student, but also tells other students that this is what we're looking for. And that encourages other students to behave in the same way. That's called peer prompting, which is a type of positive prompting. And if you do read any of the textbooks on behaviour management or any of the psychology type stuff, they generally say somewhere between 4 and 6 positives for every negative. Okay, cool. So we'll move to number 10. Number 11, we're nearly done. 13. So number 10 is error correction. And this black is running out. I think it's something with my whiteboard. Everything always runs out. Rapport. There's another one. We'll use a couple of different coloured pens just for the fun of it. Choice. And secondary behaviour. Outlet for energy. Outlet for energy. Precorrection. That'll do. I knew there was one missing. Okay, cool. So let's go through these really quickly. Positive prompting we've done, error correction. Now, I was supposed to put this one up here but again, these are not in order. So error correction basically is a way of going through and telling students or helping students to improve their behaviour. It's kind of the same as pre-correction in a way, but this is after students have done something wrong. And it's a very old school, traditional approach, but very effective. Very popular, used the world over, used from year 1 right through to year 12, maybe not with adults, but definitely used with all primary school and high school teachers. And it basically means that you're telling the student what they did wrong, how to fix it, and then getting them to fix it. So you're pointing out the error. Now, quite often what we actually do is get the student to point out the error. So if a student walks in or let's say they run into the classroom, and you might ask them, what is the rule about running in the classroom? They may say, I'm not supposed to do it, sir. And you might say, what do you think we should do about that? And they may say, I have to go out and come back in. And then they go out and they come back in. Or you might ask them, so you could ask them what the rule is. what they're doing, usually the other way around, sorry. So you'll ask them, what exactly are you doing at the moment? And they'll say, I ran. And what was wrong with that behaviour? They'll say, I was running. Well, what's the actual rule? And they'll tell you what the rule is. And you'll say, what's a way that... and then you'll get them to go out and practice walking in the class nice and calmly. So there's various different ways of phrasing that. Quite often we ask them those sort of prompting questions, I guess you would call it, and get them to enact that the desired behaviour once or twice. And sometimes you can make them do it 5 times or whatever, but generally, depending on the behaviour, usually once is more than enough. So that's error correction. Now, pre-correction just happens before. There's actually 3. There's actually 3 here. So there's error correction. That can include what is known as a reprimand. Did I do reprimands? No. Oh, it's actually known as an explicit reprimand. One of those ones that are never taught at universities and in teacher courses or teacher aide courses or anything, but I like to teach it because I think it's important because we do it 50 times a day. Reprimand simply means you're telling a student off. Doesn't mean you're yelling at them and like going crazy or anything like that. It just means, Sarah, I expect you to be working. If you're not doing working, obviously we're going to have a chat about that. You're going to have to do that at lunchtime. So I expect you to finish off that particular work today because it is very important and I can't have you distracting other students. Do you understand what I'm saying? Thank you. So that's an explicit reprimand. Quite a long one. You probably don't do those that often. And normally you're not doing them that loud. Sometimes you are. But generally the best practice is to be private. So you whisper, maybe not whisper in the student's ear, but it can be, I don't think it'll pick me up on my microphone. But generally explicit reprimands can be should be more private. But, in reality, we actually do use them with students in not a loud way, but raising your voice can also have an effect in a good way in terms of their behaviour, because it shows that we're starting to get more serious and we're jumping up a level or 2. So that minimum necessary force might be to draw attention to them and to show them that that we are upping the level and we're escalating. And if they want to continue, then there's going to be more teacher attention or teacher aide attention, and it's probably not going to be good for them. So anyway, that's an explicit reprimand. So that happens, it happens after the event. Same as an error correction, that happens after the event. But error correction is slightly different in that you're sort of saying, oh, you shouldn't have done that. Why shouldn't you have done that? Because it's against the rule. Off you go, how to do it. And once they've done it they'll know the rule. Kids generally figure out pretty quick that they have to go back outside and then come back in and so forth. Okay, so that's error correction. And pre-correction is a really important one that I think teachers and teacher aides should be using a lot and a lot more. And that basically means you're predicting and thinking about the behaviour and the issues that are about to happen or could happen. And as they're walking in the door, where was that one? And you're meeting them at the door, you're greeting them at the door, you're saying things like, all right, Peter, last lesson you were very, let's just say loud. So this lesson I'll be watching and I expect you to be on the ball. Okay, I expect you to be concentrating if you want to stay there. Otherwise, we're going to have to look at permanently moving you to a different seat away from all your friends. Okay, because we can't continue like that. I mean, no one's going to get any work done. And so that's a pre-correction. And it's also known as, I guess, having a chat to students. Normally that sort of terminology, having a chat with students, and you have a chat with them outside, or if you need to negotiate with them a little bit. But you can do that in a pre-correction sort of sense. So you're trying to provide them with, you're predicting what behaviour they're going to do or what you would normally need to correct them for, and you're just doing it in advance. So again, in a way, it's a proactive strategy. Well, it is a proactive strategy. So building rapport. I've done a separate video on rapport, so watch that one. I class that as a teaching strategy more than a behaviour management strategy, for no other reason than when I went through and did the teaching strategy book. So I got to that one first, but rapport is super important, not only for behaviour management, but also for your instructional strategies. So I won't say much more about that other than go watch that rapport video. The research is quite clear. Students learn more if they like and respect their teachers or their teacher aide. They behave better for them, and you need to use less behaviour management techniques for students who are there, not so much to impress you, but if it's a friendly environment, if everyone feels that they're getting along, a positive classroom dynamic, I guess is the term, the teacher talk term, then you don't have to use a lot of these things anywhere near as often. So rapport is really important. Choice is another technique that's come from, well, it's been around for a long time, but probably the most famous, I guess some of the more famous authors in this sort of space have a book called A Thinking and Caring Approach, which was no longer available for print, I don't think, and it's Barry Bennett and Peter Smilanic, which was really popular in Australia. I'm not sure about the rest of the country, but it was about 20 years ago anyway. And one of their things is choice, and the idea behind that is if you've gone through a few low-key responses and the student keeps chatting, you do an escalation to the point where you say, right, Alex, if you're going to continue to talk, then you're making the choice to move. So do you want to stay there and not talk, or do you want to move? But if you stay there and you do talk, then you're making the choice to move over there. What are you going to do? And they'll say, I'll stay here. And you say, right, choice made. And then you move off. And if Alex then talks later on, then you can say, Alex, you know the deal. You made the choice to talk, so you've made the choice to move over there. Move, please. And then Alex will hopefully get up and move. Normally it never works that smoothly, but in an ideal world it does. So that's the idea about choice, is you're giving students a choice and putting the emphasis back on them to behave in the desired fashion, and then you're just facilitating that system. Okay, secondary behaviour. So this is the idea about ignoring secondary behaviour. So in that case, if Alex was to stand up and walk over there, Alex might decide to kick a chair. That's the classic example that is used in this example. So Alex kicks a chair. We ignore that behaviour. It's secondary behaviour. It's what's known as face-saving behaviour. So it's only there to protect that student's image or that student's reputation or whatnot. It's not there as an offence to us or as an escalation by the student. So we should ignore it because that student is complying by moving over there. Secondary behaviour can also be if you say students over there, boys, quiet down please, get back on with it. I'll be there in 5 minutes. And then you keep going. They might not quiet down straight away, but you can give them 30 seconds or 60 seconds because they don't want to be seen as being obedient sort of puppy dogs or anything. They've got a reputation and an image to protect. So they'll keep talking for a little bit and then they'll quiet down and get back on with their work and comply with your instructions. So that's secondary behaviour. We tend to ignore secondary behaviour. We don't follow it up with consequences and things like that most of the time. This is another little instructional design one that I thought I'd chuck in there because I didn't want to do just pure behaviour management type techniques. I wanted to do some that were relevant also to actually not just designing courses, but also the way in which teachers or teacher aides differentiate curriculum on a day-to-day basis. And that's one of the ways you can do that. Short, sharp activities is one way. Another way that I really like at the moment is I just call it giving them an outlet for energy. There's a strategy called MI. It's more like a concept than a strategy, but the idea for MI, which is movement integration, is figuring out how you can do activities in the class, but at the same time getting kids to move around. And movement integration is very popular these days. Probably not as popular as it could be. It's just, I guess, it's more of an academic term than anything, but there is a lot of research that has shown that movement integration works really well, particularly for those early adolescent years. So that can involve games, it can involve just anything that gets them moving. It doesn't mean running around or anything, it just means up and out of their seat and just moving around a little bit. It can mean rotating now and then, it can mean doing something in a maths question here, and then once I've done that, everyone sits quietly and the teacher says, right up, next desk, and then they have to choose another desk. They go to that desk and they do another maths problem or whatever. So that's called movement integration. An outlet for energy also refers to, I used to teach some students who had ADHD and Without that strategy, I would have been absolutely stuffed. Movement integration gives you the ability, or gives you the ideas to get them out of their seat and they can contribute. So they can write things on the board. That used to be one that I used to use all the time. They can go around and collect all the worksheets off students at the end of the lesson, collect all the books up or whatever. So you're giving them, if those students are going to be energetic anyway, you might as well give them a way to achieve that. The same applies for attention-seeking students. If they're going to if there's no way around it, you might as well, I guess, join them and let them be the centre of attention within a limited way, and in a way that is more acceptable than the ways in which they would do it if you didn't give them that opportunity. So that's outlet for energy. Oh, and we've been through pre-correction. So that's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Did I not skip a number? No, 15. 15 sort of basic behaviour management strategies or techniques, bearing in mind that the same with the instructional videos that I talk about. As soon as I'm very hesitant to use the word basic or to use the word advanced, because I've got an advanced instructional video, for example, or advanced teaching strategies or whatever I called it. But when you start looking at those strategies, you realise, well, they're actually pretty basic. They just use big words to explain them, or they're just, which scares people a lot, but they're actually pretty basic. And then conversely, you look at the basic stuff and you start talking about them in ever more detailed ways, and applying them in different ways and combining them and so forth, and they start to feel more advanced. So yeah, I guess it depends on how you approach it and how you think about it. I wouldn't necessarily think of these as basics. I would think of these as essential. That was probably a better term that I could have used. So in saying that, please look at the blogs that I've got on our website or my book, and because there are about 80, I talk about 80 in those books, but in that book, but there's actually probably more like 100, 130 in there, and they're only the ones that I talk about. There are plenty of others out there once you start down the road of learning about behaviour management. So I hope that was useful, and I hope that helps. So good luck with your behaviour management practice.